Okay, I think we've kind of hit a critical mass. Others, if they come in, stare at them extremely awkwardly, make it as weird as possible. Just kidding, please don't do that. Hi, everyone. My name is Tatianna Cannon, and I am the Executive Director of Solar Austin, a 501c3 and C4 located surprise here in Austin. And our focus is really on equitable access to solar in Central Texas, including green workforce, the green economy generally. But we aren't here to talk about me today, thank God, because these are the resident experts on this topic. And I would love for them to introduce themselves, and we'll dive in with our conversation.
Well, I'm confused because I was here to talk about you. So there goes that. My name's Cameron Freberg. I am on the electric vehicles and emerging technologies team here in Austin at Austin Energy. So, hey, word gets around. I understand we're fantastic, but so we do everything from policy development to programs and everything in between, customer outreach around electric vehicles and emerging tech. So.
I see how you play it. You place your people in the room.
Yeah, no.
I know. I need to bring more people with me. Clearly.
Yeah. We didn't do it well, right? My name is Pauline Marcou. I'm the Director of Strategy and Growth at Bidgely. We are an energy intelligence company. So we work with data and artificial intelligence algorithms, and we help utilities build solutions to help them, better manage their grid, but also improve their engagement with their customers. And we work a lot on electric vehicles. My role in the company is I lead a team of solution consultants, so we're subject matter experts on the different solutions that the company offers, and I look after our EV practice.
And finally, I'm Jen Zaro. I'm the president and CEO for the Association of Energy Services Professionals, EV providers and users and planners being among those professionals. And when I'm not working, I'm also the vice chair for the Drive Electric of Florida initiative. So we're a nonprofit in Florida, making it happen.
When we had our prep call, I said that we would need a debrief of Florida, Texas. I feel like we've got some commonalities of
mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes is what I was going for.
Yeah.
So, as you all know, we are here to talk about prepping for the EV revolution. And I know that when those words are said together, a lot of people may have different thoughts of what that would look like. So given each of your backgrounds, and this question is for each of you, if we think about the revolution as a journey, and we have all these different groups sort of intersecting in that journey to go on the highway together, how do we align, and what part do you play in that revolution?
Let's start down the line.
I mean, follow your hearts. Like, we can do what feels right.
Let's switch to the other side this time.
All right, you're going to start with me? Okay. Well, for me, alignment is a lot of what AESP does. We're about bringing people together to collaborate towards solutions. So for me, I see alignment needed in really three buckets or three components that are critical to ensure our success. One being the technology and growth of the technology. I think we're doing pretty well there. Every time I come to this conference, I always see new things and learn new things and see what's possible, which is amazing. The next is really the business environment, and that includes the regulatory environment. So making sure that we're aligned there as well and are making it possible. So that might be new business processes. It might be new programs. It might be new ways of thinking about things. And the third one to me is the most important, and it's where I'm hoping to see all of us come together here with some projects we have coming up for ESP, and that's the human component. So you can have the greatest technology in the world, and you can have amazing processes that your engineers hyper developed and you've got all the boxes and they're all checked, but if you have not considered the human component to all this, you're not going to be successful. And so it's really important that when we think about alignment, we think about the technology, we think about the operations, the systems that need to go in place, but we most importantly think about the human factors and what we can do to move the ball forward there.
I'm gonna piggyback on that because I think your point about people is crucial. The way we think about it on our side, like the vendor space, right? So helping utilities build, design those programs and implement them, is that down the line, if you think about it, it's just about people. EV owners are people, right? They have habits and they have needs. They have a context, a way to, process the world and understand you as a utility. And what's really important is electric vehicles are a topic where it's kind of for one of the first times, it's happening in a lot of different ways, but it's one of those big topics where for the first time you have the grid and customers who are coming together. Is it like electric vehicles are, adding a big load to your grid, but there are also customers who need that additional electricity from you to now power their car, and it's about how to align. When you think about alignment, it's how to align your grid, the demand, the needs of your grid with the needs of your customer. And so I think there's like a really big opportunity here to like really turn our customers, like people, into partners of your grid management strategies.
And I'm going to have a little bit of a long answer for this one. So our role is kind of into two separate roles, because not only are we a utility, but we are also the municipal government here in Austin. So our role kind of comes across 5 different areas. One is, putting the charging infrastructure out, starting that process early, learning and growing with that technology and what benefits and then, hurdles that can present is part of it. Tied to that is, we really already have a relationship with our customers, and this is a great way to improve it. I'm not sure if you all have wonderful relationships with your utilities as a customer, but those interactions aren't historically great. It's either pay a bill, reconnect my service, disconnect, things like that. So to have like a interactive program with customers of something that they chose to adopt and to help support that, it really creates a great customer experience. So we embrace that side, not only on like our program development, but also all the outreach and education we do, because they, citizens of Austin, they're customers of our utility, and being able to grow that. And then also really like, we just meant on the grid integration side. Selfishly, yes, we are a utility, so we have to understand how this impact's going to happen. With just around 30,000 EVs already here, we're not talking about a negligible amount of electrical load. It's a significant amount of infrastructure. So how do we balance that and utilize technology that's out there, in the vendor space to manage that growth as we go forward? So
healthy codependence, right?
Mm-hmm.
I won't make a joke right there. I think everything that you all said is a great segue to the next question. It also makes me want to ask each of you 15 questions separately. But let's talk about demand, right? So with a revolution in tow, we have a number of demand needs. So that might include workforce, tech infrastructure, the grid. We have a lot of different things we could discuss. So how are you thinking in your individual roles about incoming demand for what the EV revolution will require?
I'll start on the grid side, actually, like how we look for that. I did see a wonderful presentation from a Lindsay McDougall yesterday about how EVs on the grid are being impacted. So as this grows, we're looking at, okay, what's going to be the main thing that kind of dictates how the demand hits our grid? Is it going to be from behavioral programs, which we've done launch before? So like having things like time of usage strategies that incentivize charging based on pricing. That's one way to look at it. But now we're transitioning into, much like thermostats, is how customers can allow control of these assets so we can be more dynamic with that kind of control. So it's, it's certain simple things like getting the right kind of infrastructure out there. For us, it's communicating charging that has availability to be, curtailed or ramped down. So building out that infrastructure and then putting in the signals to actually control that to minimize peak demand is part of it. And the future state's going to be, well, now it's not just pulling, it's how do you push that stuff back onto the grid eventually as well, once you go over some technical barriers there. But that's kind of the three-phase approach we look is we want to include behavioral, the actual control strategies, and then how we use that as like a generation asset in the future.
Well, I feel you're like you're the perfect utility because you've got you want to use all the options.
Is anybody from ETS in here that can quote that first?
Their heads are gonna explode. Don't do that.
I'm a kind of decent customer. I want Sean to remember this. No, I do want to follow up with what you said, because I mean what you described is exactly what we like on our side with our utility clients that we work on, because there are different ways of tackling that demand and the different ways of engaging with your customers. It's like and by the way, in the broader context is the paradigm shift in the customer relationship between the utility and the EV owner. As like it's not you've got to stop thinking like any way you've done it before, like reset the stage, right? It's like there's a completely different paradigm. Because I mean it sounds dramatic, but when a customer buys an EV, de facto the utility becomes their gas station, right? And so they will depend on you to charge up their car to drive from point A to point B or to go to work every day. So there's a bigger stakes than what was before. So, and there are different tools and different solutions that you can leverage. And I mean, I really like your approach because you're looking at all the different options, because there is, as you laid out, there are like newer technologies like the car telematics and connecting and controlling the charging of the car remotely, but there is the power of data as well. It's like the meter data, the consumption data that you have can give you tools and solutions to nudge and coach customers through their their new car and help them mitigate those additional potential energy costs that they have from having an electric vehicle. And so, I mean, that like there are a lot of ways of thinking about it, but there can't be a one size fits all. It's like each customer is going to be different. It's going to react to and need a different approach. And some customers might just need that little recurring like nudges, the little touch points once in a while to remind them, not to charge their EV during peak hours. But other customers actually might need a bigger push, right? The bigger carrot. That's like the incentive to enroll in an active managed charging program, for example. Those incentives are very high. I mean, the average enrollment incentive is around $125, $150. That's a lot of money for each customer. And so you don't have, unlimited budget. So the question is, would you want to spend those $150 on a customer who will get you like a very low kWh shifted, or do you want to spend it on a customer who's like a high on peak users, repeatedly charges on peak, and actually will actually deliver results for your program? I mean, this is the kind of questions that we think about with our utility partners, because there's a way to use those incentives dollars in a smarter, more effective way than just rewarding potentially free riders or customers who might just not just like the concept of free riding is more from a program design perspective, but like those customers who just don't need to be that involved, maybe, right? They just need that like friendly reminder once in a while, or that proactive communication about avoiding to charge during peak hours, but they don't necessarily need to give you the controls of the car.
But I think it's important to be meeting people where they're at too, and not everyone is at the same place. And so some people, they will just need a time of use rate or price signals, right? But other people are going to need different things to be educated, to be able to take advantage of that. So I think Paul Lau was talking about how the utility's role is changing. And, I kid when I say, positive codependence, but it really is. Like, we need to find a way that we're supporting each other. The customer is supporting the grid, which helps all ratepayers, if done right. And obviously, the utility is much needed by the customer to supply the energy and the experience too. So I'm excited to see utilities go into more of that orchestration role. I think that's really a sweet spot of not just being that trusted advisor to help educate our customers about the possibilities of EV, but also how to do it, how to take that next step, but also to see them kind of, again, play that grid orchestrator and really help balance the grid and not just focus on delivering energy. So I think we do need to take some proactive steps, though, in this process, especially if you think about the fleet operators that are coming. It is a very painful process, having seen both sides of this. If you're a fleet operator and a large one at that, and you decided you wanted to go EV, and you bought your cars, you put in the order, you started to put in the charging stations, and then oh wait, you need a service upgrade, and your transformers cannot hold that additional load. So, the utility can step in there, but it'd be better if they had already gotten to that customer, right, and had taken a proactive step to reach out to that customer and ask them, what are your plans for the next 12 to 15 months regarding electric vehicle fleets? So trying to get in front of it and be proactive too is, I think, a change in behavior that we need to see from the utilities to help make sure that we're catching people before they are being primed for a bad experience related to electric vehicles. So if you buy these cars and then they're sitting there, or trucks, and they're sitting there because you can't actually charge them the way you thought you'd be able to for 9 months while you wait for that transformer to arrive, that's just not a good experience. And believe me, I'm sure they have friends, and they're going to tell their friends, and so on. So again, I think it's really important for utilities to take a proactive role in thinking about demand and not wait for it to get hit by the train.
I have on that orchestration piece. I've learned I've learned two major things since starting here. One is nobody drives as far as they think they do when you talk about battery sizes, but that's not relevant. The other one being is there's always this curiosity, oh, do we want to have infrastructure for charging before we even have the vehicles, or do we want to get the vehicles before we put out infrastructure? And having infrastructure out there that's not getting used, at worst, is maybe mildly annoying because you might get pinged of why it's not used. That's like worst case scenario. If you go the other route, and especially if you're investing in your own assets, like fleet electrification you mentioned, and having that stuff in place with no infrastructure is 1,000 times more painful, because you're playing a very pressurized catch-up game to get that out there. And if you've ever tried to do the charging infrastructure projects, there's going to be about 15 delays that you did not expect to happen, whether it be from hardware, from utility, from permits, from you don't know what yet. So it's always, I think the proactive approach to that is absolutely important. So
yeah.
Cameron did a great job answering my next question. That said, I know we did have a potential visual aid. Are we wanting to share that with the group now, per our previous question? Yeah. So as a reminder, this is, I'll let you tee up the video.
Well, it should have sound.
Oh yeah, I think you have to hit
I can sing.
display.
You can sing. I think we all want to hear that now.
I think you have to restart it, and then. Sorry for AVing over here. That's not very nice.
Well, I won't say much. I'll let you watch it. It's a good intro. It's a good recap of how we think about EVs and the solutions that we offer. But and kudos. We have Pooja in the room from a marketing team, and they did a great job making it. So he gives kudos to his own team. I'll give kudos to mine.
Oh, I don't even see my team here.
Yeah, we'll just play the video, and then I'll follow up afterwards. Or we can take any questions.
It might be coming out of TV.
Do you want me to turn the sound up on it? I don't know how to do that, but
Sure.
Oh, there we go.
I hear something. Yep.
So we just need to restart it, I think, from the start.
Well, maybe while he's doing that, I'll talk about one other thing that I think is really important related to this proactive approach. We have billions with a B dollars coming our way from the federal government, and we're excited about that. And, you know, a lot of money coming from the NEVI program specifically for charging infrastructure. And so it should hit every state. So all of us are going to be dealing with this. And I think it's really important. Like now I want to watch it. I think it's really important for us to think about as utilities, how are you going to manage the slew of new interconnection requests that you're going to be getting for DC fast charging? Because if you're not thinking about that now, whether that be using something similar, like with solar, I used to deal with solar, and we started getting into capacity mapping. And so thinking about constraints on the system and where circuits had room for adding solar and where they didn't, I think we need to be thinking about that with especially DC fast charging, because we're talking about, I know in Florida, I'm working on a project where for NEVI funding, it's a minimum 1 megawatt per site, and probably closer to 10 megawatts per site in most of the locations. And so that doesn't happen in 2 weeks. That takes a while, and you've got a lot of charging providers that are going to be submitting applications to your interconnection queues. And if you haven't thought about a way to process those applications without just saying, oh, thank you for all the work that you've done with your site mapping and your permit applications, and nope, that's a constrained site and it will take us 2 years to upgrade that particular feeder, choose again. We do not want whack-a-mole in the industry. I think that sends a bad message to everybody. And so it's really important to be thinking about how to overcome that, whether that's with red, yellow, green capacity maps. Like, you don't have to give away the farm to give information to make it easier for people to site charging stations, but at least give them some kind of an indicator of good locations that are ready to go today, locations that might be able to be ready to go in a few months, depending on the capacity, and sites that they should probably wait a little while or look to employ a non-wires alternative with it. So just saying, I think that's really important. We're going to have a lot of money coming our way. I'd hate to see our delays caused by us just not being ready.
And I mean, to follow up on that I mean, you're teasing up like really well. But there's what's really important, be able to have an accurate picture of the EV adoption, EV penetration, right? So like the reliance on data like, you know, DMV data, which is very out of date very quickly, or having to parse out social media groups, you know, to understand who owns an EV, is just not a sustainable solution. And so there are other ways to do it, leveraging like AMI data. So like Bidgely, we have the technology that we offer is like disaggregation, help us identify, you know, who owns an EV and how they're charging their vehicle at home and that sort of thing. And so I think that is helping our utility partners keep a pulse, like almost of a live pulse on where are the EVs popping up and which of my assets are at risk of you know, EV hotspots. And that's really, I think it's really important, because you can't plan without the data and without the accurate and picture. Yeah.
I love it. I see that we're back to our home slide, so I'd like to give a big shout out to our tech guys in the back.
Thanks for trying.
They keep everything trying. We watched a multitude of efforts to make that happen, and it is by no fault of your own that we're back to our home screen. We've already started answering, as I said, what all of that was leading to. So let me reframe it a little bit. Understanding that there is debate in the industry about, you know, what is the most logical entry point? Where can we be intersecting as industry partners to set ourselves up for infrastructure success in terms of electric vehicles? So you all have each shared, I think, a bit of that perspective. But tell me, what else do you feel is vital, either based on your professional experience in your current wheelhouse, but what do we need to be really mindful of in terms of the successful foundation of infrastructure for this revolution?
Number one is, if you're going to own it, you have to learn how to operate it successfully. That's a big piece of it. Like early on, I think there was the mindset is, we'll put this out there, it will work forever, and we will never have to deal with it. And it has been the opposite experience for that. So we touched briefly on like workforce development before as well. So that ties into it in terms of, you know, qualified electricians that know the software components within it, and same with the installer community, like getting that built up to support that, and just really focusing more on like how you operationally scale, like you're opposed to putting the charging infrastructure out there, because it will break. It will get.
Call me if you need workforce development. No.
Break.
So, somebody will back into it with a truck. Somebody will hit it with a baseball bat.
Away, right? But it's still plugged in. It'll happen.
Yep. So.
I would add to that, just interoperability is really important when you're thinking about your solution platforms and solution sets. So I think it's going to be a very bring your own ... grid in the future. And so thinking about trying not to pigeonhole yourself into one solution set or one charging infrastructure company. I think you have to have solutions that can scale, and that means making sure that you're thinking about that on the front end when you're choosing whether it's your ADMS or your DERM system that you're going to be using to communicate and potentially control these devices in the future. And then of course every vehicle is different with their telemetry, so trying to get in front of that by just thinking about a few vehicles isn't going to get you there either. So just making sure that you've got something that's flexible, most importantly, and can scale over time is going to be super important for this.
Yeah, I mean, I would tie it back, say, like you talk about the telemetry, it's like the charging controls, we were talking about it earlier. It's the majority of, cars in the market are from a very, just a few, like 5 or 6 different car manufacturers. And the majority of them have the telematics technology that allows to control the charging of the car remotely, but a lot of those vehicles don't have it. They allow sharing the data. They don't allow sharing the permission to control the car charging. So you do have to have options for customers who don't have, that Tesla or that Toyota who has the telematics technology required. So it's about, looking at, smart chargers is one option. There are debates, I think, around like the usability of charger telematics, whether it's there for the long run. We are more pro vehicle telematics, because in the end the question is like, why would you, if you can bypass basically the hardware, go straight for the software in the car. But there's an inclusivity angle. Like each customer has a different needs, and you want to make sure that you have an option for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. It's just making sure you have an option for everyone.
Yeah, and you mentioned the vehicle versus the charging stations. I mean, and we're for residential applications where where that station lives, that seems to work pretty well. If you start going out of that realm into things like maybe public charging or shared resources, if you're going through the charger, you have no idea who the end user is now on something you're doing. So that's where like the vehicle telematics come in extremely handy, is so knowing, and because the perception you're going to have is, oh, this charger's broken. When it's really, if they don't have that communication with that customer, knowing like, oh no, it's going through their vehicle now. Is very important.
And imagine if you have a residential customer who has an EV but doesn't charge at home, for example.
Right. Maybe they charge at work.
Yeah, maybe they charge at work. And so if you want to incentivize that customer to charge during on peak hours or hours where your grid is less constrained, if you tie it up to the charger, you're missing out on someone.
Yeah.
Right? Like that person could help you contribute to your efforts to better manage your grid. But if you tie it up to the charger, you're leaving that customer aside, basically.
Yeah.
So we have done our best to sort of grease the wheels, introduce you to these brilliant brains next to me. And now the floor is yours. If you have questions about the EV revolution, I have more that could be asked, but we want to hear what you want to know. Got one. Oh, yep, here we go. Okay.
I have 10 questions. Which number do you want? Pick and choose. Number 6.
What the price is right. Wait a minute.
What can you hear me?
Yes.
What are you doing about disaggregation and also for all of you for condos and apartment complexes?
Such a good question. I'll let you start with disaggregation. I think you do some pretty cool stuff there. So
Yeah, we do. Thank you. So Bidgely started 11 years ago now. We pioneered appliance disaggregation, which is basically technology that allows us, based on the meter data, to identify very distinctive signatures from each appliance in the home. So we started with HON data, which is... Well, it really depends. So we work with homes that are single meters. So like you could have an apartment building if you have individual meters for each apartment. That is more challenging because you need, like, if it's 1 meter for several apartments, it will be very hard to distinguish which apartment is using what appliance. So unfortunately today it works on, individually metered properties.
how do you serve? Yeah.
That question gets more complex as you go into different kinds of multifamily as well. So everything from whether it's an apartment or a condo makes it different. Is it shared or dedicated parking makes it different? Is it a garage or a surface lot? So you have like a whole kind of spider web of different challenges there. So there's certain areas that we focused on. I mean, getting the right configuration is going to be very specific to a certain building. Like if it's individual owned parking, sometimes they'll install sub-meters there that actually track that. Like the properties will do that. So they kind of figure that one out. But we've had a heavy focus on how do we ease the pain of like building out the infrastructure like in the long term, because what's that right number is still to be determined. I mean, eventually 100%, hopefully, so really focus on some like the core assets on early construction. So when they're doing their actual buildings for new construction, like sizing those transformers correctly for that future load, so they don't have to replace them 5 years down the line. Putting panel space in there for the long term, so they don't have to replace those long term down the line. And probably the most cost-effective way to do it is like putting in all that conduit so you don't like punch holes in your garage 2 years after you installed this garage all throughout the place. And what makes it difficult too when we talk about condos with like dedicated parking is you might have 15 EVs, but one might be on floor 6 on this side. This parking spot might be on the second floor. And so really, really kind of mapping out that core. It's not like the end product that's like the good picturesque piece. It's just literally transformers, panels, and conduit. But putting that in at the time of construction is a big part to being able to build out to whatever that number is going to be. So.
Yeah, and make ready is so important, I think, when you're thinking about multifamily, because you want to allow for growth and scalability again. So making sure, and really that comes down to the municipality or the county, the permitting jurisdiction to help support some of that too. So it's not just on the utility, but also on that community to help encourage it. We do need to get the word out that that's important to do. So having utilities work with their community leaders and offer make-ready incentives and do outreach to landlords if it's rental apartments, for instance, I think is really important. I've seen some very innovative ways to address this where it's a car sharing program within a particular multifamily community, and with that comes a couple of chargers for the vehicles. So just to sort of build awareness and build that capability. I've seen where the landlord gets a nice incentive to put in some shared charging, and it's either a point of sale unit or it's you get a card and you charge with the card. So I think there are ways to tackle it. I've also seen utilities doing a lot with right-of-ways and easements and using those to help get closer to the multifamily properties or ensure that they have a workplace option too. So I think there's lots of ways to tackle it. And I think it's really probably going to be an all of the above strategy.
I think we have time for one more question. If anyone has something there, knew it. Here I come. I have very short legs. Give me a second.
Firstly, thank you, panel, for such insightful insights and all of it. Just one of the aspects I wanted to ask about is while prepping for the EV revolution, one of the major load that we see is on the distribution grid in terms of the transformers and everything. So is there any monitoring systems that the utility is looking for to understand that there is not much load under transformers, or how do we manage the aging grid so that we make sure that we are prepared for the EV revolution?
Such a good question too. I don't know, Cameron, if you want to start with what Austin's doing, and then I could talk about a few other things. No, oh, not good. Okay.
No, the impact on like the residential side and like even some larger banks of like level 2 charging, it hasn't been that impactful yet to us. Where we're starting to notice is what you mentioned earlier is like, okay, we're having fleets come in with large banks of DC fast chargers that take up more load than the tallest building in Austin in the size of a parking lot now that used to. So we're going from like 10 kilowatts serving a parking lot to 10 megawatts serving a parking lot. So we're kind of learning as we go on that one, but it's really getting that early identification of, okay, now we know where this is going to be in 3 to 5 years based on some build-out strategies. Okay, so now we can start maybe prioritizing substation build-outs to support that kind of growth. So it's that's where we're seeing more impact than anything else is on like the fleet electrification and some of their future plans, because it's not going to be small amounts of like overnight charging. They're going to have very, very large charging depots, and it's not just going to be the fleet side, but it's going to be like anything related to medium and heavy duty electrification when that hits as well, because those are going to require that kind of charging. And so just, whether it be working through like our existing channels of some of the companies that already are here and getting understanding of their electrification plans as a part of that, and maybe some insight into where they'll geographically be. That's a hard kind of thing to chase, because they're trying to acquire land at the same time they're trying to acquire like a utility service. So it's just really getting very, very upfront information as quick as we can on that build out. So
I think on the residential side, we're seeing some innovation and transformer monitoring, but it's pretty limited so far from what I've seen. But there are some predictive analytics, and I'm sure Bidgely can help you with that, but where they are actually...
So nice for pitching for us.
Well, I just know you do it, so I'm just saying. But I think there are predictive analytics, like if you have purchased solar, for instance, you're more likely to purchase an EV. And so there's some propensity modeling out there that is happening to help determine who might purchase an EV. But also, let's face it, like keeping up with the Joneses is quite real. And so we often see these clustering effects in EV where Bob bought one, and so Joey wants one too. And so, I literally had this happen for real in my neighborhood. I have now everyone around me drives an electric car because they all had questions. And they're like, how much are you saving? Like, what's it like? And so I feel really sorry for Duke Energy, because I really put the kibosh on that transformer, not intentionally. But I think clustering effects are real. We need to pay attention to that. And when you get one on your system and you see it, maybe go ahead and upgrade the transformer now. Just start thinking about it, because I guarantee you one of those neighbors is going to go for it.
Yeah, this is exactly what the video actually covered. Jen so did a great job at recapping it. No, but that's exactly what it's about. Like the trends that you see is like the EVs don't. They like the first ones might pop up randomly, but then very quickly you see the populations around just catching up, right? It's like it's what my neighbors have, I want it too, and so it's what you mentioned is actually the idea of asking each other's questions. There's actually a big educational component, as in like the demystifying of, how far can I drive, on a full charge. These are big questions that customers are asking when they're considering buying an EV. And actually, they don't think about asking, turning to their utility for information. They think about asking their neighbor, their cousin, brother, sister, or their colleague who just bought an EV. That's the people they're going to go to ask questions. And so as you said, if you start seeing like 1 or 2 EVs pop up in area, this is very quickly going to become a cluster because people are going to see it, and you start seeing EVs around, and you start getting ideas. And so it's that's how usually it works. And then, as you mentioned, rightly so, there are also trends around, customers who have certain appliances are more likely, to buy an EV or others. So we actually apply, propensity modeling to our analytics. Solar and EV are definitely intertwined together. This is actually solar and EV a very interesting use case because if you want to help, customers charge their vehicle at the lowest rate possible, why not charge? Why not get solar panels and charge your EV when your PV is at full, generation output. And that's an amazing, when I think about it, it's coming like full circle. It's like, that's a great use case. And yeah, it's really interesting, those trends. I don't know how you think about it on catching up with the Jonases and the trends that you see in your territory.
Yeah, it kind of is. We are seeing that kind of, especially neighborhood specific. So we early on had one of the densest clusters of EVs in a single neighborhood in all the United States, in in Northeast Austin here. So luckily it coincided with a research lab that monitors that. So that
lucky.
That was a nice coincidence. So we do keep up with those trends, and we do see adoption spike in certain areas because of that mentality. Exactly. So also I can picture the video in my head. It was fantastic.
So with our final minute, I would love each of you to share just a couple of words about what excites you most about this EV revolution. And I'll go first. As the executive director of a nonprofit that works really, really closely with workforce development, and equitably so, I cannot wait to funnel some females and people of color into this EV revolution workforce. What about y'all?
Mine's really on not just individual EV adoption, but just seeing the entire market from everything from the bus down to the e-bike kind of change that. We're putting in very heavy mass transit investments here in Austin, and for it to all be on an electric platform, or mostly, is extremely exciting to me. So
I think thinking about on the next frontier, for me, what's really exciting is the next capabilities. It's very much still nascent and not readily available, but the vehicle to grid, V2G capabilities. So now having a tool, an asset that not only uses electricity but can pump it out back to the grid at certain times when you need it, and basically be a battery storage on the move. I think this is really exciting.
For me, I'm a mom of 3 boys, and 2 are drivers, and they've never driven an ICE vehicle. And my 10-year-old can't drive yet, thank God, and we don't want him driving. But I know they talk about it. They are, he's like, Mom, I can't wait to get my EV when I'm older. Like, they'll never know what it's like to pull into a gas station for gas. They go there for a drink, So I'm excited that can happen for everyone, that, everyone's kids experience, that.
That's beautiful. Let's give it up for our panelists, y'all. Yeah. I am sure that they will stick around if you all have any questions or want to exchange contact info, etc. But that is our time. Thank you so much for joining us.